Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me, ZebraStrongGirl, otherwise known as Marie. Today we are going to be talking more about my EDS, because you guys were so great last week. I am trying out a new med, or not a new med, it's an old it's an old med that we have tried before, but we're trying to go back to. But it was making me super foggy last week, so I took that week off and you guys were great about it. But it kind of reminded me of why I started this channel, and it made me want to kind of fill you guys in on the whole EDS part of it, because it's been almost 2 years since my last EDS video, my very first EDS video, which will be linked here and down below. So yeah, don't forget to comment any questions you have for me. Don't forget to like the video, and don't forget to subscribe and share to help spread EDS awareness. Thank you, and with that, let's get on into the video. So I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I've been putting off making this video, and I actually filmed it last night, and now I'm refilming it. Is that a word? Refilming? Because my first time filming this video, I was trying really hard not to get emotional, and I think that was a mistake. EDS is still something, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is still something that I am struggling with, and most likely will continue to struggle with until they find a cure, or at least a treatment, and it is something emotional for me, and I'm still in the mindset that I need to embrace it, but I don't let it rule my life anymore. But I looked back at my old video and I realized there's a fair amount of stuff that I missed, like talking about it from the beginning. So there are just a few things that I wanted to kind of share with you guys starting from the beginning. I did, between my fingers getting really bad and my finger dislocating for the first time, I actually I broke my ankle on the soccer field. I know, I used to play soccer, can you believe it? And that was kind of my first trauma to my ankle and knee. Well, not my ankle, obviously. I can't remember which ankle I broke, actually. I think it was my left ankle again, but don't quote me on that. And that was kind of our first hint that, you know, this wasn't just my fingers. And then I got bronchitis that summer, going into 7th grade, and I was switching to oboe because at my old school you had to start on the clarinet to switch to a higher woodwind, and so I was training to be an oboist. I think that's a word. And I had bronchitis, so I was honestly not able to play for the majority of that summer, and then I went back to school and my fingers were a problem again. Playing oboe, writing, everything. I was in and out of the ER. I talked about this a little bit, and it got so bad that I did end up with cast on both arms, which I talk about more in my last video. But it all started in my pinkies, and the doctor who I have the biggest problem with, he also held my finger down like this. So my finger goes into a swan neck deformity when it pops out. We now know it's just subluxing. But, I mean, it's actually dislocated previously, but my more common problem is it subluxing and locking. He held it down, he didn't tell us what he was doing, and this was the same trip where he accused me and my mom of wanting to be there and trying to do this to me, which again, I was, I think 12, maybe 11, maybe 12, and this doctor's accusing me of wanting to be in the ER in the middle of the night, and that's something that sticks with you, and and I've dealt with it a lot more since my last video. I am still in therapy, which is something I try to be very open about with you guys. But it's something that really stuck with me, and we now know what he was trying to do was kind of tire out my finger muscles, but he didn't tell us that at the time. And it was causing me a lot of pain, and we now know there are medications that can do that for you rather than holding down a 12-year-old's finger while she's crying out in pain. So that was good. I then saw a military geneticist when my fingers were really just the problem. And he didn't think I had EDS at the time, because I had had very minimal injuries with my larger joints that we had known about. And then that summer, my shoulder dislocated for the first time that we know of. I leaned on a table at a Jason's Deli, and I happened to be wearing a tank top. And my mom looked at my shoulder and said, "That doesn't look right." And then I couldn't move my shoulder. And we tried to get it back ourselves. I think it might have even slipped back, we thought, but then we ended up going to the ER for it the next day, after I had gotten to school, because it hadn't slipped, if I remember correctly, it hadn't slipped all the way back. It had only slipped somewhat back, and I couldn't get it to go back, so we went to the ER, and they finally said, "This can't be the conversion disorder again." So that was really when they started talking more about EDS, and we were moving up here shortly, so there was only so much we could do. And when we moved up here, we saw the military geneticist again, and he did confirm the diagnosis of EDS. Or not confirm, I'm sorry, he diagnosed me with EDS, and then we finally were able to see Dr. Levy at Hopkins, which he is pretty much the closest thing you get to an EDS specialist. His life's work is finding out more things about EDS, and he confirmed my diagnosis. And at that point, we had kind of just started finding the EDS community online, on Facebook, there are multiple platforms that we connect with people with EDS on. That made no sense, but I feel like you guys know what I'm trying to say. And it's kind of incredible that you have all these people who are suffering, all from slightly different versions of this one thing, and yet there's still so much more understanding than anyone else. And that kind of leads me into my second topic. Losing friends with EDS is something that's definitely happened. It's a lot for other people to handle, and for me, I don't have an option, but being someone's friend, you kind of do have an option of being their friend or not being their friend, and I think for a lot of people it is too much to handle, and they don't have to deal with it, so they don't. But then I've also had friends I had falling outs with because of how much I was talking about the EDS, still trying to wrap my head around it, and then misunderstandings, who we are now closer than ever. So it's just, as much as you lose friends with having EDS, because of having EDS, you also re-find old friends. You find out who your real good friends are, who will stand through anything with you. You find new friends who accept you for who you are and don't care what physical ailments you have. And so that's kind of something I feel like I never really touched on in my last video as friends. You might hit a few people who just don't handle it well and leave you feeling like you were a burden. But then you also have these great people, and even if you haven't found them yet, you will, because, you know, there was some time there that I didn't think I would ever find friends that cared about me as much as they do, and I'm in a much better place with a lot of my friends now. So that's just something I wanted to touch on super quickly. I did also want to talk to you guys about kind of the comedic side of EDS. I am honestly very clumsy. Like, there's just things like you wouldn't think could happen that happened to me, and my friends, every time someone got hurt at school, people were like, was it you? And I'm like, hey. So there's some things like there you can find a comedic side to it, and it's kind of how I cope with all of it. And you know that it may not be the best thing, but it's not the worst thing. Like, I fell on the ice. The ice is terrible for me, especially this time of year, because we live where Snowmageddon happens every year. And so, like, at least once a winter, I just crash on the ice. Last winter, we were in the parking lot of a grocery store, and my mom was like, okay, I'll be over to help you. And so I was getting out on one side, my mom was getting out on the driver's side, and all of a sudden she just couldn't see me anymore because I had just, like, fallen on the ice. And, like, stuff like that. At the time, it was terrible, but now looking back on it, it's pretty funny. And, like, I fell and I managed to dislocate my ankles so hard I actually broke off a bone chip in my foot, and it was fine. I had to wear a boot for a while, but looking back, you can kind of laugh on some of the stuff that really sucked back then. But I also wanted to talk to you guys about using the wheelchair. Something I've had to do a lot more since my knees and ankles and hips have started becoming more of a problem. Wheelchairs at school are really hard, and, you know, just anywhere. The United States is not very... there are some places that are incredibly wheelchair accessible, but there are a lot that are not wheelchair accessible. There are colleges I'm just not going to be able to go to, not because of my grades or anything, but because there's no wheelchair accessibility. And then you also get the people who stare at you when you're in the wheelchair, like you have a plague. Or you have people who yell at you for using a handicap placard in a handicap spot, and then get into your wheelchair and they're like, oh, you're faking it, you're too young, you don't have to use a wheelchair. And it's like, well, you know nothing about me, I do need a wheelchair. So guys, I'm just gonna throw this out there. If you see someone in a handicap parking spot who has a handicap placard, just don't bug them. Of course, there are people out there who abuse it, but I feel like when we end up policing who's in the handicap parking spot, not the government, but just regular old people, people with chronic illnesses tend to feel bad about using it. I know I'm very conservative about how I'm using my parking placard, just because I have gotten, like, really dirty looks because I'm using the handicap spot, and I was at school for a art show last year, and this older lady was like, oh, do you actually have a parking placard? And we're like, yep, and I was in my wheelchair. So just, the wheelchair is not fun to use. They look fun. Don't steal people's wheelchairs. Another thing I've had happen. It's not fun for the person who needs the wheelchair. Yeah, just throwing that out there. Wheelchair accessibility needs to be improved too. That would be great. I wanted to talk about, you know, I had a really hard time in my last video about EDS, partially because I had a very different attitude back then. Now, back then, I was very conscious about how other people were looking at me, what other people thought about me. And, like, I wouldn't use the wheelchair because, like, I thought my friends would be embarrassed. And at the time, I had some friends who were embarrassed that I was using the wheelchair and, like, told me not to use the wheelchair, or told me that they felt like I was manipulating them into hanging out with me because I couldn't be at school and I was sick and somehow that was my fault. And since then, I've gotten rid of some very toxic friendships, and I've really started to put my mental health and physical health first. I still have depression, I still have anxiety, and it's something I see a counselor about, and I have a psychiatrist, and I'm handling it, but I'm making sure that I'm happy, and I'm homeschooled now because school just wasn't working out for me, and I did drop theater, but it ended up being one of the better things for me. I found DECA last year because I dropped theater, and that was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I got to go to California on a school trip, and I didn't think I would even be able to make it 4 hours away from my house on a school trip for a weekend, and I ended up going on this huge trip across the country for a week, and I found cosplay, and I went to Comic-Con, and I found things that make me really happy, and I've stopped caring if they make my friends happy and started thinking about what I want for my life. I think that's probably my biggest difference now from 2 years ago and 5 years ago, and I'm a very different person, and if I didn't have EDS, I would be a completely different person. And you know what, I think I've stopped thinking, what if I didn't what if I didn't have EDS? Well, I do, and at this point I'm a zebra warrior, and even if they find a cure for EDS tomorrow, I have changed a lot because of this illness. And I don't know if I would be a better person without it, but you know what? This is the deck of cards I was handed, and this is what I'm doing with them. So I just wanted to talk about, I feel like I have a very different attitude now than I did then, and honestly, I think it's better. And if you are struggling with mental or physical illness, I think putting your own health before petty drama is better for everyone. So just gonna throw that out there. Homeschooling. That's something that's also very new for me, and I know a lot of people, I've had a couple of people tell me, oh, you're so lucky, you get to stay home and watch Netflix and, do whatever you want. Homeschooling is very difficult, and for me especially, I am definitely a audio and I learn through lectures and hands-on, so doing stuff on the computer for me is a lot harder, but it's also, with my pain days, it was always hard for me to concentrate on my bad pain days, and now I'm not even having a teacher talking to me on my bad pain days. I just have to read. You know how when you're really tired and you're reading a book and you're reading the words, but none of it is being absorbed, so you read the same page over and over and over again, and just none of it's getting into your brain. That's something that I'm really struggling with homeschool, that I think people don't really realize. I don't get to just I'm still struggling, and homeschooling did not fix all my issues, basically, is what I'm trying to say, because I think people think I'm lucky for being homeschooled. I love school. I used to love school. I'm a very social person. It's been kind of a struggle not seeing my friends every day, and I'm still working on that. I'm still working on kind of trying to have a balance of that. I have found good doctors. That's kind of one of the next things I wanted to talk about. I have an amazing surgeon now after going through a ton of orthopedists because they just didn't believe me, or they told my mom not to let someone put the EDS label on me. Still not really sure what that means, why I shouldn't have the label of EDS, because just having an unknown, undiagnosed illness is so much better. Like I mentioned, EDS can be quite dangerous if you have the vascular classic type, and there are a bunch of other types that I do not know off the top of my head. There are 13 types, I believe, and the classic, vascular, and hypermobile are the most common. I have an amazing surgeon who has helped me so much. I have a fantastic counselor who has been an advocate for me in so many ways. I had a fantastic school counselor. Obviously I'm homeschooled now, so there's only so much she can do to help. And I had a fantastic sub-school principal, and I have a lot of people in my life who have tried to help me through this, and unfortunately there's just only so much they could do. I was watching my old video and I just realized I was being very negative, and I wanted to share that there were some great people who really helped me through all of this and still continue to help me. And finally, I wanted to talk to you guys about EDS awareness and what I'm trying to do to help. I am hopefully going to be an EDS model in a photo shoot trying to spread EDS awareness, which I am really looking forward to, and I will most likely do a video on if everyone's cool with that. And I am hoping to do a Girl Scout Gold Award on putting people in the position of someone with a physical illness or mental illness, and I will also keep you guys updated on that, because I think for me the biggest struggle is, I've always said, if my teacher or doctor or whoever could just spend 5 minutes in my shoes, they would have a completely different viewpoint or point of view about how I'm dealing with all this, because I think one of the other biggest struggles is the whole opioid epidemic. It's a real thing, I fully believe that, but you can't just assume everyone's a drug addict and treat them like they're a drug addict when they're coming into the ER for legitimate pain issues. And I'm not going to go into some of my really terrible ER stories I did in my first version of this video. I think repeating that story gives it more power. And I don't want those doctors to think they have any sort of power over me anymore. Back on track, EDS awareness. I've always said that, just spend 5 minutes in my shoes, and that's what I'm going to try to do for people with depression, people with anxiety. Put someone, a neurotypical, able-bodied person, in their shoes for just 5 minutes, and I'm going to have a panel, hopefully, to talk about, what it's really like, and that's what I'm trying to do to spread EDS awareness. And also, of course, this YouTube channel is huge, and me being able to sit here and maybe get 20 views or 100 views or 200 views like I did last time, but to even educate one more person about EDS who didn't know what it was last time or yesterday, I mean, they know now. So, that's huge. And medicine is improving, and they might find a cure tomorrow, but that I will always be this person, and I will always be an EDS warrior. And I realized I never shared with you guys what the zebra means to me. So in the medical community, there's a saying, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. Meaning, yes, all my dislocations could maybe be chalked up to just, oh, I'm a teenage girl, I'm supposed to be hypermobile, which, by the way, if I hear one more time, I'm gonna punch a wall. No, the meaning behind it is, yes, there are horses, but there are also zebras, and they have hooves, and they make hoof beats too. And so sometimes you have the zebra, and it's important to keep that in mind. I also want to talk to you guys about kind of some of the other things that go with EDS. The POTS, I got that diagnosis. I kind of talked about it a little bit. It's Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia syndrome. It's a comorbidity with EDS, which means it kind of goes hand in hand with EDS along with mast cell activation disorder, which we believe I have, but I need to do like a test that's super inconvenient, so we're just kind of waiting to do that. So EDS is not just one thing. Everyone mutates differently because it is a genetic disorder. It doesn't affect everyone the same way, and I think that's something that's hard for a lot of people to understand too, that you're never going to have two EDSers that present exactly the same way, and I think that's difficult. And it's frustrating for me because even I have friends with EDS and it's just not the same. And I can get it more than other people can, and they can get it for me than other people can, more than other people can, but it's still not the same, and that's really frustrating too, and something I don't think a lot of doctors really understand as well. But I have found some really good doctors. I'm in physical therapy because I did have 3 failed shoulder surgeries. One of them was due to a trauma to my shoulder after surgery, which was really frustrating for me at the time, and still is very frustrating and hard to deal with. But here's the thing, it happened and I'm moving on, and I think that kind of ties into what I was saying about my new attitude, that I'm trying so hard not to just spiral. I don't know where I was going with this. I'm just gonna say this. I'm sorry because I feel like this video might be a bit kind of shambly. And of course, if you guys have any specific EDS questions for me, please leave them down below, and I will most likely be doing a part 3 when I look at this again and realize that a lot has happened and I need to fill you guys in, and I probably missed more things in this video like I did last time, and yeah. So I just want to say thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I know for some of my new subscribers, this is probably a very shocking difference. This is not my makeup videos, and makeup brings me so much joy, but I want to, you know, kind of address that I'm not always going to be like a perfect beauty guru, that the EDS is really what caused me to start my channel. I'm never going to look perfect behind the camera, and I'm never going to be as consistent as everyone else because I will have other things going on, and I hope you guys like my content enough to stay, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the video as much as you could. I would love it if you could share this video to kind of help educate other people on what Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is. If you guys have any questions for me but don't want to leave them in the comment section, you of course can go to my Twitter or Instagram, which is down in the description box below, and I will leave links to the Ehlers-Danlos Society, the Zebra Network, and the definitions for POTS and mast cell. And I think that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Bye guys.